2017 was the year where hurricanes have caused the most damage in recent history. Although the number of lives lost in the season for these monsters of nature does not even enter the top 10 of the most deadlier in history, the economic losses they cause reach sums never seen before. These beasts are classified by categories, with 1 being the lowest and 5 the highest. And even when it's very strange to see one category 4 or 5 annually, 2 years ago we saw 2 category 4 and other 2 of the 5th category. Scientists around the world expect hurricanes to become more and more dangerous each year due to global warming, and if we don't do something about it, it may not be a good idea to live in these danger zones anymore. And also, in this channel, we always ask ourselves crazy questions as like, what if America had never existed? It is worth asking the following. My name is Rafael Peraza and this is What If a Super Hurricane Destroyed Florida and the Caribbean. In this video we will create a hypothetical hurricane with twice the strength, size and power compared to the most powerful storms in our history, and we will see how this will affect the areas where it will advance. This is a very delicate subject and clearly something that should not be taken lightly. These monsters of nature end with the lives of thousands each year, and the intention of this video only lies in educating ourselves about it and to see what are the consequences that can bring our own destructive acts as human race. In the end, we will leave information on how to help those affected by the hurricanes in recent years. We do not wish harm to anyone and we want to help. First, we will talk about how hurricanes are formed and how dangerous they can be. If you don't want to hear this information and you want to skip to the scenario of a super hurricane as never seen before, go to the timestamp that appears on the screen right now. So, how do they form and how dangerous can a hurricane be? A hurricane begins its formations when a storm condenses hot water, pulling them to the surface while it's gaining more strength and speed. Soft winds in the atmosphere plus strong winds in the base will give you the necessary power to move forward and grow. The waters of the Caribbean are quite warm compared to those of the deep Atlantic. That's why every time a hurricane begins to appear in the sea or in the Gulf of Mexico, it becomes increasingly dangerous. These storms have different names depending on where they are. In the Atlantic and the west coast of North America, they are called hurricanes. In northeastern Asia and Oceania are known as typhoons, and in the Indian Ocean and the South Pacific are cyclones. To measure its strength, there is the Saffir-Simpson scale, the one that categorizes these storms depending on the damage it caused and the speed of its winds. Category 5 Hurricane Patricia has been, up to the moment that I make this video, the storm with the fastest winds in history. They reached 215 miles per hour or 346 kilometers per hour. In a matter of size, it became almost as big as the territory of Ukraine, but although Patricia was a giant in normal standards, it is only a baby when we put the typhoon tip next to it. A Category 5 beast, the biggest in history to be honest, as big as Mexico, Chile and Spain together, with winds over 189 miles per hour or 305 kilometers per hour. Fortunately, Tip was born far from land and began to lose strength when approaching Japan. For this reason, the number of lives that it collected was relatively low, a number that if we compare it with the balance that the cyclone Bola left, it looks like a blessing. Bola, of Category 4, has been the storm that has taken more lives in history. It touched ground in what we know today as Bangladesh in 1970, and although the economic losses were relatively low, not reaching more than $85 million, this had a deadly balance of 500,000 people, 500,000 people dead. A really disturbing sum. Bola did not reach Category 5 since it was born very close to the coast of India, and that did not give it enough time to grow, because when a storm touches land, it begins to lose its strength. But one that had all the time in the world to grow was the Category 5 Hurricane John. It lasted for 31 days, making it the hurricane, typhoon or cyclone with the longest life in history. It traveled from the coast of Mexico to Hawaii. Due to not touching land at any time, it never lost its strength, but thanks to this, it didn't cause almost any damage. But if we talk about Hurricane Harvey, it is a totally different story. This one came to a Category 4 with almost the same size as South Korea, touched ground in Houston in 2017. Along with Katrina, this was the hurricane that has caused the most economic damage in the world. with a total of $125 billion. This amount of money in damages represents a little less than the gross domestic product of the countries of Ecuador and Bolivia together. Now, knowing all this information, let's take these hurricanes to the next level. This super hurricane of our hypothetical case will be the combination of almost all the aforementioned records and multiplied by 2. This beast will begin to form on the shores of Cape Verde. Meteorologists will observe its growth with enough fear as it looks to be a storm for the history books. The alarms will go on. A hurricane with the potential to break all historical records is about to begin its trajectory towards America, and due to the great danger it promises, it is assigned the name of Hurricane Lucifer. From the moment of naming the storm, we will have between 7 and 10 days to prepare before it can get to the east of the Caribbean. From there, it will begin its destruction to all the islands in the area, and it will take it another 5 days approximately to arrive to Florida, where once it touches the ground, it will begin to lose strength. But as it is so large, its life will be longer than any other hurricane that touched land. The day after the weather centers gave the hurricane signal, mass evacuations will begin immediately. It is estimated that upon reaching the warm waters of the Caribbean, Lucifer could become as large as all the territory of Argentina and will have winds higher than 250 miles or 400 kilometers per hour. Fast enough to destroy almost any structure or ship that passed through it. And although in Florida and Georgia many people decide to evacuate and flee west, in the islands of the Caribbean not everyone could afford that, so hundreds of thousands of people had no choice but to stay and wait for everything to happen, and that would be very expensive and dangerous. Seeing how different this hurricane looks, a Hercules meteorological plane is sent to study it. From the inside, Lucifer hasn't reached the warm waters of the Caribbean yet, but it is already a ruthless beast. Winds of 217 miles per hour, already breaking the record established by Patricia, presage total destruction and very bad news for the islands of the Caribbean. It takes hours for the meteorological team to reach the eye of the beast, going through the walls of this, which are where the winds are faster and more violent. And no, don't worry, these planes are designed to withstand winds up to 800 kilometers per hour or 500 miles per hour, so nothing will happen to the crew or the plane itself. Where the information reaches the agencies and the trajectory that Lucifer is taking is much clearer, it is possible to draw an estimate path, and these are bad news. These will have a similar route to the Hurricane Irma, going through the Greater Antilles and hitting Florida. The difference is that Lucifer will be hundreds of times larger than Irma.
Devastating damage expected. Hurricane
Lucifer.
A most powerful hurricane with unprecedented strength, rivaling the intensity of Hurricane Camille of 1969. Most of the area will be uninhabitable for weeks, perhaps longer. At least one half of well-constructed homes will have
When Lucifer enters the warm waters of the Caribbean is when people could see it in its greatest splendor. Winds of 650 km per hour or 400 miles per hour, 4 times more powerful than Patricia, as big as the whole continental area of Australia. Its rain brushes the coast of Venezuela and Puerto Rico at the same time. Granada, Dominica, Anguilla, the Virgin Islands of the United States and the British ones, totally destroyed. Ships chopped in half, houses torn from their foundations, all the vegetation detached from the root. Total destruction, and the worst was yet to come. Although Lucifer wouldn't touch land in any of these major islands of the Caribbean, their winds will spread throughout its territories. Walls of water up to 40 meters or 130 feet high will collide with anything that is on its way, whole cities like San Juan, Punta Cana, and Nassau will be under more than 4 meters of water for hours. This super hurricane is so strong that it destroyed small residential buildings and even severely damaged skyscrapers and large structures like stadiums, hospitals, universities, and others. Prisons will collapse, allowing thousands of inmates to escape, thousands and thousands of dead people drowning, crushed, and in many other ways. If you expose yourself directly to the fury of the hurricane, your bones will break by the force of the winds in your body, being able to end your life in instants and without any help. After the Caribbean and being in its best shape, Lucifer set course to Florida, and this is where the greatest damage begins. Miami will be where it will touch land for the first time, destroying almost the entire city, just like it will do it to a house of cards. All the surrounding areas, Fort Lauderdale, Boca Raton, West Palm Beach, completely cut out, destroyed. Even cities like Naples on the other side of the peninsula will be gravely affected. It will continue to rise with a lot of force and strength, with winds at 330 miles per hour, crossing Kissimmee and Orlando, and brushing Tampa from the map. It will continue its path, becoming a Category 4 and 3 for about 5 more days, until arriving in Georgia, where it will cause disasters in the city of Atlanta, and from there it will begin to fall into a Category 2 and 1 and probably become a common storm after approaching Illinois, expanding its life for a little over than a month. After Lucifer attacks a particular city or area and continues its path, no matter where it was, they will experience total damage to the electrical system and other structures. Rescue forces are not going to be able to arrive until several days later, leaving thousands homeless and with no hope, to be honest. And when they manage to arrive, they will not be enough to help all the victims. In the Caribbean islands such as Cuba, Puerto Rico, or La Española, the one where Haiti and the Dominican Republic are, where their infrastructures are not the best in the world, Lucifer left a destruction of up to 99% of all properties. In Florida and parts of Georgia, massive looting of anything that wasn't destroyed will occur. Those nations that could send their armies to the streets to ensure some calm will try to do this. For weeks, the majority of communications will be cut. Even those buildings designed to take all kinds of climate catastrophes wouldn't be safe. The Orlando amusement parks will suffer gigantic damages. Calculating prices of properties and lands, constructions, hotels, and others alone, what Disney parks and their other buildings cost could be close to $40 billion combined, and those are going to be lost, if not more. And that's only the Disney ones. It also will be necessary to calculate the value of the parks of Universal Studios, SeaWorld, and others, and this will be nothing, because when eventually everything is over and the government calculates and how much economic damage this storm caused, the blow will be something totally unreal. Approximately 70,000 lives and $800 billion will be the estimated losses when adding to all the affected nations, some as big as all the annual production of Colombia, Chile, and Peru together. Many countries of the world will set themselves the task to donate and help to rebuild, but this is not going to be easy at all. Many insurers will go bankrupt and could not pay the clauses promised to their clients, and those who did not have their belongings insured, well, they simply lost everything. Relocation programs over cities will collapse due to the high number of refugees. The number of these refugees could be higher than 5 million people. The economy of many of the affected islands depends almost entirely on tourism, and hurricanes such as these not only destroy the tools necessary to develop this sector, but also destroy landscapes, marine life, and the required infrastructures to this sector, ending not only in the destruction of the moment, but in the impossibility of generating income after the catastrophe. People will be desperate to get gas, water, food, and medical supplies, and even when in the continental area of the United States, this will not be so difficult to solve since they will bring many things from the north, center, and west of the country. In the Caribbean, we will see many problems among the survivors. Because of the lack of energy, gasoline will become the main source of enough power for generators and other machinery, and from now on, the recovery of this great tragedy will be the main focus of attention worldwide. After Katrina and Sandy, and realizing that the public sector will have many problems to solve this catastrophe, many of the funds allocated for reconstruction were handed over to private construction and insurance companies such as ICF, and while thousands remained homeless, companies pocketed more than $1 billion in profits. That's right, profits from a hurricane. These examples were taken in account during the first year of reconstruction after Lucifer. Temporary houses had already been built, but there were still hundreds of thousands of people homeless. Professional sports teams from Miami and Orlando had to move temporarily to not so distant cities such as Tampa and Jacksonville, where the damage was not as severe. Many small islands of the Caribbean were still depopulated and totally destroyed. This will be a tragedy that will continue to mark humanity for many, many more years. Many cities and entire islands were beginning to look a little more like they were before, but it was no use to continue rebuilding when by our actions as a race, the oceans continued to warm up, contaminating and raising their water levels, leaving the table served so that another super hurricane, so great or even worse than Lucifer, to be formed again. So, for several years, many nations of the world began to impose strong economic sanctions to those who did not respect the environmental laws, even the United States, making that if you wanted to continue polluting, okay, you can do it, but no one will negotiate with you, hurting your economic sector. Things in this world must change because the next superstorm could happen anywhere and without much warning. But together as a species, we can achieve it. We can change the world. To help the people of the island of Puerto Rico, you can go to the following page, link in the eye that appears in the upper right corner of the screen. And well, that's how we end this video, my friends. I particularly like this one because it makes current issues and alternate realities that are the backbone of this channel, in addition to the fact that the video format was more like a documentary instead of another YouTube work. So if you like the video and you are new in the channel, like it, subscribe, and keep watching more videos. My name is Rafael Peraza and this was Knowledge Strong. Have a great day and thanks for watching.